He's immortally graceful. He's imperially powerful. He's impartially merciful. Do you know him?
My name is Gay Ornelas Chastain. I live in Eureka. I fellowship at Ambassadors Fellowship at the Embassy. I'd like to tell a little bit about my story. I met my children's father when I was 14. We married at 19. We're married 42 years. And then he died. I thought I was going to live a much longer life with him, but he died. A year and a half later, I met the husband that I call the Prince. And we were only married 6 years and he died. So I would like to tell you a little bit about that process that I went through in that. The children's dad, I wasn't dancing in the streets when he died, but the level of grief that I had was nothing like the Prince. For 18 months, I had what I describe as a 4-inch hole in my chest that had a physical, even though it was internal, it had a physical feel to it. I could have outlined it and told you where it was. All that time I'm pursuing the Lord. I'm a mess. I'm calling out to God thinking, help me. Actually, he was helping me. I went through a grief share program, which didn't help me very much. But mostly what helped me very much was going down to the embassy and for prayer at 6 o'clock every morning, crying my eyes out among people that let me do that and embraced me while I was doing it. And at the end of that hour, I would always feel better, like I could meet the day. Pretty soon I could do it for a week without having to do that again to meet that day. Anyway, it's been almost 3 years now, and the joy has returned. My sister, a testimony to that is my sister came to visit me a couple of weeks ago, and she's not a heart girl. She's an intellectual. But she emailed me when she got home, and she said, it warms my heart to see how you're embracing your new life. Which God fills the void, but death is such a mystery. It's such a mystery. The loss that we feel, and yet we know the joy that they have. This man was a faithful man. He was a minister of the gospel. He loved God. I know he's in heaven. But for those 18 months, that didn't help me to know that. Because he's not here. I need him here. I'm here. But after this length of time, the faith actually is more restored at the same time that the joy came back. And I guess that would be my story of the grief. God is big enough. He's big enough.
Did you have any particular verses of Scripture that you held on to or that really gave you strength or comfort or hope?
None come to mind, but there were literally dozens. There were dozens that helped, gave me hope. There were also some that made me crash. The Bible that I'm now reading was his, belonged to the Prince, and he bought it after we met. And he was a man that all of his Bible study, his Bibles were marked up all over. But when we met, he bought a brand new Bible. So everything that's in there, all of his markings were part of discussions that we had. So sometimes I would read a scripture that would be uplifting, but then I would think, oh my, we discussed this and we said this and we said that. And so that would bring the grief back, but you have to redirect yourself to the Lord. But a couple of weeks ago, I just had another crash. I'm reading through Jeremiah right now, and the scripture said, I forget if it was about a lady who died or if her children died, but the scripture said that her sun went down while it was yet day. And I just started sobbing. My sun went down. And we had a lot of day left. But there is something that we have to accept, the way God directs our life. He's directed my life forever. Forever. So this is really no different. But my sun did go down.
did you find the Lord in any deeper way through this process? I mean, the comfort that you received, or as he helped you work through the process, would you say that you're closer to him through it, or he just sustained you through it?
Well, I've had a lot of bumps in my life. Some of them would maybe more be described as one of those Tijuana potholes that could almost swallow up a car. But I've always had the gift of joy. The name that was given me is really my heart. So sometimes in the biggest heartaches, I had joy. So it was actually the same in this grief, where even with this 4-inch hole, and if I'm crying my eyes out, I also had a joy most of the time. The children's father, he came to the Lord in a much deeper way his last 5 years of life. So I was already on a high with the Lord. But the prince was a dedicated, sold-out man, and he brought me up to a much more intimate relationship with God, because he had it. He exposed me to it. He taught me how to do it. I watched him model it. I could see the benefits. I could see how it was done. I'm not a very creative person, but if I see an example, if I see a model, and I know I want that, then I see how to do that. So I would say maybe it's age, maybe some of it's maturity, but a much, much deeper, more intimate level with God.
Now you went through this pain, this grief with the Lord. It's kind of hard to imagine going through something this painful without, like you said, you know where your husband is, you know he's with the Lord, you know he's in a better place. If there's a lot of people that don't have that confidence. The scripture says we don't grieve as the world grieves, those who have no hope. So if there was someone that was going through what you went through, what could you share with them to help them?
They've got to go through with the Lord. That's the only answer. There's a lot of levels of grief. You can have grief even without death. You can have unfaithfulness in a marriage, but many people have had children that have died. I've never had that. I've never had a miscarriage. A lot of grief that people suffer, I've not known. But I know that God is the only answer for any problem. There are people that are strong. They seem to be able to deal with things from their own strength, whatever they pull up within themselves, which I still think is God. He just doesn't get acknowledgement for it. But to walk intimately and closely with him, where he's available to you and you take his availability and he wraps you in his arms and he comforts you. Nothing like it.
Can you think of one instance that was really precious during that time when you were going through your grief, where maybe you didn't understand, there wasn't an answer, but beyond that you felt the comfort and presence of the Lord? I know you mentioned the prayer times in the mornings.
Yes.
But was there another occasion that you just really specifically, there's a scripture that comes to mind that he is a husband to the widow and he's a father to the orphan. And I'm just wondering if there was an experience that you had that you could just share that describes that.
This may be a little different than you're asking, but what comes to mind is an experience I had in that chair where I was looking at his picture and thinking of our time together and just sobbing. I thought, I'll never have that again. I will never be able to find a person that is so perfectly made for me. He was made for me, and he just fit. That will never happen. And he's gone, and I'm just sobbing. And then I stopped, and I thought, wait, I did have it. I didn't have it very long, but I had it. Many women never know such a life, ever. We all have that Cinderella dream. Few ever have it. I thought, I did have it. And that was an aha moment to me, because when I realized that, within a short time, my tears dried up. I got up out of the chair and I went and found something to do. And that was an aha moment that taught me how much control our own mind has over our grief. Whether we choose to be a victim, choose to be sad, or whether we take it in stride and use it to enlarge our life. Whether we use it to have compassion on other people. I'm not sure that answers you, but that's the example that came to mind. That was a life changer to me.
Anything else you want to say? All right.
I love God.